Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 12:45 p.m. California time. This afternoon, I have a live stream to answer some questions from my disciples who are living in Vietnam and Australia. These disciples do not clearly understand the situation about the U.S. presidential election, and they ask questions. So I want to spend a little bit of time answering some questions related to the U.S. election and fraud. I am Dharma Master Thich Lai. This live stream is for my disciples in Vietnam and Australia. Those of you who are living in the U.S., I think you have a good understanding about the election, unlike the people in Australia and Vietnam. I also would like to send my dear greetings to all overseas and in Vietnam Buddhist followers, especially in Australia and in Vietnam. I would like to read the email asking about the election. Dear Venerable Thich Lai, we are some of Buddhist followers who are living in Australia. Some of us have been to your Amatet village and some have not. But we often listen to your teaching through the online system. We wonder about the news we saw this morning on the internet as well as on Twitter that the President of the United States declared winning the election. The first question we have is whether it is true or fake news, because Facebook and Twitter claims that they would block immediately any candidates of Democrat or the Republic who claims to win the election. However, this news was not blocked, so we think it is fake news. Since you are in the United States, do you see whether this news is real or fake? Please let us know so we can be happy, because we are supporting the U.S. President Trump. Australia will be at peace if President Trump wins the election. If not, Australia will be suppressed, bullied by the Chinese communists. Respectfully yours, we wish you good health and looking forward to receiving your explanation. Signed by some Buddhist followers in Sydney and Melbourne. We sincerely prostrate Master. There is also another group of Buddhist followers in Vietnam. They called me directly instead of sending an email, because they are afraid to contact me by mail. The Vietnamese communists will give them a hard time later on. I would like to answer this question. I acknowledge the statement from President Trump. It was true that President Trump declared on Twitter that he was the winner of the election. Why didn't Facebook and Twitter block his statement of winning the election? My dear disciples, we have to go backwards on Thursday, November 12th, 2020. When the President of the United States just announced the U.S. states is in a state of emergency. This announcement is news when the U.S. is at war. The announcement caused many people to be surprised because there is no war at the moment. Chinese communists did not send troops to attack Taiwan. Chinese communists did not send troops to invade Vietnam. And the Chinese communist troops did not mobilize. But why did the President of the United States order the state of emergency? Let me tell you. When the United States wants to send these special forces to infiltrate Germany to attack the base, that contain the Dominion server, that is the supercomputer that was made to count ballots and sell to the world. I repeat that if President Trump does not announce the United States is in an emergency state, it is impossible to bring the U.S. military to attack a sovereign country under the law of neonatal. Germany is also a member of NATO. When President Trump declares a state of emergency, the United States is entitled to use its military on all territories of allied nations without being unconstitutional. So when President Trump received the intelligence source that the Dominion server is in Germany and manipulated the presidential election of the U.S., he immediately issued a red alert for the United States last Thursday. As soon as he gave the order, a special task force infiltrated and confiscated the server of the Dominion in Germany. These are two servers located in Canada and Germany. When the U.S. Special Forces surrounded the one in Canada, they surrendered and delivered the machine immediately. The one in Germany required the military special force. Since the U.S. is in a national emergency, the government can send its troops to allied countries without violating the NATO agreement. Remember, even though Germany is a member of NATO, but it is still a sovereign country. On Thursday, November the 12th, the server was confiscated. The Dominion system had been released a few years ago and was approved by the U.S. government to count votes in elections in the United States. Later on, the company went bankrupt. The U.S. Special Task Force confiscated the server and found that the Chinese communists had manipulated the system by reprogramming the software. The Dominion system had been used in elections around the world, including the one for the Prime Minister in Great Britain and many European elections. It had been manipulating American democracy for several years now. President Trump claimed he won this election by bringing in legitimate votes. So why didn't Facebook and Twitter dare to block him? Because President Trump has obtained the Dominion server that is located in Germany. He has complete evidence indicating the Chinese communists are behind the server. In addition, he also has 3 hard drives provided by the Chinese Communist government, not Xi Jinping, but from Jiang Zemin. I tell you this, Hunter Biden's laptop is a drop in the bucket. The owner of the repair shop gave it to his lawyers to protect his life. The laptop contained dirty things of Joe Biden's son. However, the 3 hard drives were provided to the FBI and CIA by Xi Jinping's opponent. These 3 hard drives and the Dominion server shows Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris and other Democratic senators have been involved in the fraud, manipulation, and corruption in the United States. I want to make it clear to you that President Trump has sufficient evidence. Therefore, he declared winning, but Facebook and Twitter did not dare to block. It is just a matter of time that President Trump will unveil, and those politicians have to face court. But in my opinion, this is not that simple. Even though President Trump already discovered the fraud and sabotage of the election, presenting it to the court will be bad for the entire U.S. government. Americans have known about the corruption and bribery through the media, but hearing it from the court is a different thing. It's like a tsunami. Obama will be the first one to go to prison, then Hillary Clinton, and finally Joe Biden. For a long time, the Constitution of the United States have never required a former president or vice president face court. So this is the dilemma that the U.S. government has to consider. I now declare that President Trump wins 100%. My Buddhist followers in Australia and Vietnam can be reassured. In the meantime, the Democrats are making deals with the president. President Trump is still debating whether to release fraud records from the Dominion server or not, because the U.S. will no longer be respected by other nations. With the evidence, many Democratic politicians from the presidential level, the Speaker of the House, and the hidden powers that supports the fake media will go to jail. I also want to tell you another thing. England recently discovered that the Chinese Communist is manipulating its government. Let me give you an example. NASA makes spaceship and operates over thousands of communication satellites under the control of the U.S. government. One day, Chinese communists brought over 51% of its total stock. Then NASA will belong to Chinese communists. Raytheon manufactures the missiles. At the moment, these two organizations will still be under the control of the Department of Defense. Meanwhile, the Chinese communists control all major national companies in England, including manufacturing computers, banking, and even submarines. The Chinese communists hold over 61% of the share. England is panicking, and the only way out is if there was a war between the United States and the Chinese communists. England would join as an ally and to take back all the companies that was under the corrupt hands of Xi Jinping. Currently, Xi Jinping manipulates 1/3 of over hundreds countries around the world. The Dominion system have manipulated the election in Venezuela. There was no hacking like they said. Hackers are people who are very good in technology and hack into banks to steal accounts and credit card information. But this machine was manipulated by the Chinese communists and supported by some billionaire in the United States. Dominion went bankrupt a few years ago, but still operates in the U.S. because of the secret party. For over 1,000 years, Chinese practiced corruption by using beauty. Those politicians who visit China would fall for the beauty trap, including Lê Khả Phiêu of Vietnam. The Chinese appointed a beautiful girl to sleep with him, and in the end, 1,000 kilometers of Vietnam land was sold to China. They did the same thing to Americans. Let me tell you about my personal experience. For the past 5 years, every day, they have young and beautiful girls from the age of 18 to 20 to contact me. They use money to buy me off, it has been halted for now. Democratic politicians in the US government are merely mortals, so they will fall for these traps. The 3 hard drives contain evidence that are hundreds and thousand times worse than Hunter Biden's laptop. If they are publicized, announced, the US government will be tainted forever. President Trump is winning. He said so strongly. He also said it is difficult to arrest Obama and Biden because these 2 people are under the law of exemption. The president and the vice president have never been jailed before, but people like Hillary will be put on trial. And the CEO of those fake news media will also be as well for cooperating with Chinese communists. Since we are on this topic, I want to tell you, my Buddhist followers, that I don't answer text messages because I have block dysfunction on my phone. Every day and night, they have beautiful girls attacking me. That's why my phone can't receive or send text messages. I know that there are monks in Australia and Europe used to oppose the communists. After they fall in the devil's trap of beauty and money, they cannot speak up against communists. Because of the evidence, they silently become communist henchmen. Buddhist followers, please understand the reasons I never answer text messages. I also do not respond to Facebook comments and Messenger because avoiding where they use money and beauty to destroy spiritual leaders. Currently, I think it is very difficult for President Trump to hide this. He can hide this, but Xi Jinping will not. Xi Jinping will be released to destroy the U.S. credentials. Xi Jinping has hundreds, thousands of pieces of evidence that show how Chinese communists has controlled the U.S. for the past 20 years. I want to tell my Buddhist followers in Australia and Vietnam that President Trump has already won. After they inspect the Dominion server, 62% of the votes in California voted for President Trump. If that is included, President Trump will be elected with 410 out of the 538 electoral votes in total. So he won 100%. But it is the matter of reducing the loss of face because the Chinese communists has penetrated the U.S. electoral system through the Dominion. In fact, this system shouldn't be used because the original company went bankrupt. However, it is still new since the 2 elections of Obama, of the Congress, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and many other people of the Democratic parties. It is very big, and if President Trump dares to bring it down immediately, the U.S. will be in a state of chaos, which is not good for the United States at all. As you know, yesterday, the governor of Washington State ordered isolation again, like last March. It is true that the number of infected people increases, but you also know many Republican states are all open except the Democratic states. They plan to close a second time. This plan was supported by the CDC agency. All the vaccine distribution to the market must be approved first by the CDC. In the 3 hard drives, they discovered that the CDC is also controlled by the Chinese communists. People working for the CDC are under the influence of the Chinese communists, so they can't allow the coronavirus Wuhan vaccine. Without the CDC approval, no pharmaceutical company will invest and will have mass production to provide for the Americans. That is the loss of the American people. So far, the vaccine has been successful with a result of 97%, and only 3% has side effects. All drugs have no 100% successful results, including the common flu vaccine. If 100 people get vaccinated, then 10 people will still get sick. 97% success rate, that should be more than enough for approval. However, the CDC has still not answered. There should be plenty of vaccine for this flu season, but the U.S. pharmaceutical companies did not dare to produce because CDC hasn't approved. They can spend $100 billion to produce and go bankrupt. This is a painful blow. The Democrat takes the lives of Americans and breaches U.S. security for all its benefits. Once again, I advise my disciples in Australia, don't be sad and don't cry. President Trump announced over 2.7 million votes have miscounted in a few states. Imagine how many votes were ignored in the 50 states. In my opinion, President Trump will talk to the Democrats to offer them a deal. President Trump won't give all the evidence out, but only the tiny ones. I am not sure if the Chinese communists will sit still. They will roll out all the bad things of the United States in the past 20 years. How they use money and beautiful girls to bribe all the leaders of the great Democratic Party to destroy the United States. So rest assured that President Trump has 100% won. After the winning result is declared, some will go to prison and some will be forgiven. Releasing all evidence in court will cause the American anger, and they will rebel, which is not good for the economy of the United States. If you look closely, the declaration of a national emergency also give enough time for all the U.S. businesses that are involved with the Chinese communists to withdraw. President gave 1 year for these businesses to relocate to Japan, Taiwan, and India. On November 12, 2021, if these companies have not implemented, all assets of this company will be confiscated according to the law. The fact that the U.S. government was bribed, especially the Democrats, by this time was blatant. So President Trump said he will clean up the electoral system. We see clearly that CNN has paid the price for defaming President Trump for a long time. AT&T decided to sell CNN because it is worried about the problem with CNN. At the moment, CNN stock is very cheap, and AT&T called to sell CNN under $1.5 billion, while it used to be $3 to $5 billion. AT&T has to sell CNN because it does not want to be involved. One day, not far from now, when the evidence is presented to the public, the anger will explode. President Trump is now standing between two thresholds: clarifying the evidence that the corruption in the U.S. government, or holding it back. The Chinese communist has influenced 1/3 of the world already. Even England if this problem is not solved, the United States will never be at peace. The main problem now is how to reduce the loss of credentials. Hunter Biden's laptop only has proof on himself, but the 3 hard drives are about Joe Biden and other Democratic politicians. I see President Trump wants to forgive. He wants to ease and to hide the ugliness of the corruption in the United States. I think Xi Jinping will bring it out. Because when President Trump wins the election, the Chinese Communists has no reason left to pressure Joe Biden. All the corruption evidence becomes worthless, and the Chinese will release it to make America lose its credibility by showing that the U.S. government is as corrupted as many other governments. The Chinese only congratulates Joe Biden after the Dominion server was confiscated. As you have seen, the BLM organization also lost its credibility. They stated that we want something for our votes. If my disciples and I went to vote legally, we wouldn't ask President Trump to pay something to the Tham Nguyen Temple unless we have done something illegal. For example, the Tham Nguyen Temple has headquarters, youth centers, Amitabh villages in Conroe and India. The Chinese Communists successfully bribed Buddhist nun Hồng Đức, Buddhist monk Thuy Khang, and Thuy Minh to overthrow me. For a long time, I have no evidence, but the Dominion server proves all the crimes of Hồng Đức, Thuy Minh, and Thuy Khang are siding with the Chinese Communists. That was also be a shame for me as well. I have to find a way to replace them smoothly without damaging the credibility of the Tham Nguyen system. Look at my situation to see dilemmas of President Trump. Those corrupted politicians are holding many important positions, such as Vice President, Secretary of State, and also CEOs of many television networks. The Chinese Communists failed to bribe me, but was successful on nun Hồng Đức, monk Thuy Minh, and monk Thuy Khang. With the Dominion server and the 3 hard drives, I know exactly how many millions of dollars was transferred to them. What should I do now? If I declare the ugliness truth, then the credentials of the entire system will be jeopardized. The U.S. has been a superpower country for a long time. So President Trump is facing a big dilemma. If my system is like this, I can't just eliminate nun Hồng Đức or monk Thuy Khang immediately because I have to find a solution that causes the least damage to my system. President Trump already won, and the evidence is enormous. But he has to consider what should be released and what should not. Don't you think? Please be confident of victory is 100%. The only thing I worry is Chinese Communists will release all the ugliness, all the ugly truth, even if President Trump doesn't want to release all the evidence because the U.S. will lose its credibility. Sincerely yours.